Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast, where we dive into the real stories behind entrepreneurship, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. I'm Mike Conrad, and today we have a fantastic guest who knows all about building careers, businesses, and meaningful conversations. Joining me is Bryce Batts, the co-founder of Career Collective, a seasoned career and business coach, and the host of the Wine After Work podcast. With a passion for helping professionals find their true calling and entrepreneurs build sustainable businesses, Bryce has guided countless individuals through career transitions, personal branding, and mindset shifts needed for success. But Bryce doesn't just talk business. She also brings insightful, candid conversations to her podcast, Wine After Work, where she sits down with inspiring guests over a glass of wine, I presume, to discuss work, life, and everything in between. Today, we're going to talk about her entrepreneurial journey, the lessons she's learned as a coach, and the power of networking and personal branding. Plus, we'll get a behind-the-scenes look at the Wine After Work podcast and what it takes to host a successful podcast. And it all begins right now. Stick around. Hi, Bryce. Thanks for being my guest today.
Hey, Mike, I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited you're here. I'm excited you're excited. Tell me a little bit about a little bit. The whole show is about this. So let's just start digging into your entrepreneurial journey. What inspired you to start Career Collective? Well, let me back up a little bit more. What is Career Collective? And what types of customers do you work with? And then we'll get into what crazy idea, what inspired you to jump into the deep end of the cold pool and start a business. So start with, what is Career Collective?
Yeah, so Career Collective is an AEC staffing firm. That's architectural, engineering, and construction. So we do recruiting and staffing for consulting firms nationwide, all direct hire, permanent placement, and we only work within the AEC industry.
So that's well, in your world, it's probably not that narrow of an industry. In the global sense, that's a pretty narrow, pretty niche industry. Were you working in that industry prior to starting Career Collective?
I was, and so that's kind of why we started Career Collective. I was working for a small staffing agency that just did AEC recruiting, and so was my business partner. We had been there about 12 years, both in different offices. I started out in Florida, so did he, and then he was living in Denver. I came back to Raleigh, have a family here, so he said, I think we should team up and start a business together. But I'll back way up. When I got into AEC staffing, I was getting my MBA because I didn't know what I want to do. And I don't suggest spending a ton of money on an MBA when you are just trying to figure out what you want to do. But I did make a friend in the program, and she said, you should come work with me. I'm doing staffing for the AEC industry, and this is now my husband, but at the time he was my fiance. She said, that's the same industry he's in because he's an architect. And I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. So started doing that, really fell in love with it. No one sets out to be a recruiter, but I did really enjoy it. And it's, we always say it's like dating. It's very much about making the match because the timing has to be right. Both parties want to, like each other, get along well. So it's fun. And because you're really selling people, there's no boring day, and every day is different. And when you think you've heard it all, you never have. But my business partner, Edwin Powali, and myself had worked side by side, even virtually, for many years. And after COVID, like many people, I was like, what am I going to do next? There was limited opportunity where I was working, didn't see an upward trajectory, and just started asking lots of questions like, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to do with my career? And what's next for me? It was very convenient because I'd worked from home for many years and I had two small kids. They were getting older. And so during COVID or 2021, started looking for a new job, got a really great offer, told Edwin about this, and he was like, okay, so this is it. Either we're starting this or you're taking that offer. And I decided to bet on myself, and we started Career Collective in January of 2022. So we're 3 years in, and it's going well. It's been a journey and a roller coaster like many startups. But I love it, and we have a great team. We're headquartered in Raleigh, and then we have an office in Tampa as well.
I'm a California boy, and I'm born and raised here. I'm like one of the 8 people that haven't moved to your state. We're still here.
For sure.
But
here or Florida.
Exactly. I'll turn the light off on my way out. But as a kid, I used to go to Disneyland, and back in those days, when mammoths roamed the earth, it wasn't like one admission price. They gave you bought a book of tickets, and there were different types of tickets. There were e-tickets, which were the good rides, the roller coasters, and then all the way down to A tickets. And you used up all the e-tickets first, and then eventually on your way out, when you had like 2 A tickets left, you went, okay, fine, I'll go to Sleeping Beauty's castle. So all the boring stuff. So I view business as the ultimate e-ticket, right? It's the thrill ride. What were some of the biggest challenges, Bryce, when you started Career Collective? I know it's only been a few years, but clearly you already referenced, highs and lows or ups and downs. What were some of the biggest challenges that you knew you would face, and maybe some that caught you by surprise?
Yeah. I had a lot of fear in the beginning. I will be really candid and say I'm the main breadwinner of my family. We have 2 small kids, and my husband's an architect, so I know what architects and engineers make. So recruiting, I was making more than my husband, and then he changed jobs at the same time. So it was pretty scary for both of us to be changing positions. So that was a big element of it, just the fear itself. But the other element was our non-competes. We had heard through the grapevine that our non-competes had been thrown out or lost. So we went out on a limb, and, we had talked to an attorney when we started Career Collective. Obviously, we had an operating agreement and shared all of that with our attorney. But our old company did try to send us a letter, tried to retaliate, even though the non-compete was non-existent. So it was quickly dropped. But just things like that in the beginning, fear of, overstepping our bounds or getting in trouble for what we were doing. And then we had a lot of clients come with us, and I'm so grateful for that. We had built really strong relationships with them, and we did not leave trying to take these clients with us, but they quickly started calling us. I got Facebook messages from clients, so I thought that was pretty funny. They were reaching out through LinkedIn and other avenues. So that definitely made me feel good. Like, okay, our clients they want to work with us. It's not just the company that we were working for.
You bring up something we haven't talked about on the show yet, and that is if a lot of entrepreneurs' journey involve leaving a company and starting their own company. And that was my journey. I had a product that I was trying to get my company, my employer, to build that I had designed, and they weren't overly interested. So I quit and did it myself. And then once they realized I did that, now all of a sudden they wanted the product. So, and they sued me. And one of the 11 things they sued me for was violating a non-compete agreement. And there were 2 issues with their case. One was they couldn't find an agreement. I don't recall signing an agreement. Then they accused me of stealing the agreement. But
wow,
in California and in most fairly progressive states, the non-competes are almost impossible to enforce. And unless they pay you not to compete, there has to be proper consideration. Consideration is, for this, I get this. If I give you this, you give me that. And in consideration of employment, you agree not to compete after your employment. That's not proper consideration. I'm not a lawyer. Don't ever, audience, I am not a lawyer. Do not take this as legal advice. But that's my understanding. But the reason I'm bringing this up, and I'm glad you brought this up, is sometimes former employers will, realizing they don't want another competitor in their space, they don't want another kid in their sandbox, they will be the bully, the playground bully, and try and intimidate you not to run a business, not to compete with them. And your experience of hiring an attorney and doing your due diligence is great, because some people will just say, "Oh, I'm out, uncle. I don't want to fight this," and they'll just go on to do something else. But good for you guys for, pursuing that and not letting that stop you. What were some of the biggest challenges, more like specific challenges? Did you have the funding set up? Was that a challenge, or at least in the beginning? Obviously, clients asked where you were. They found you. That was good. But probably you need more clients than that. So what were some of the most scary challenges that you had? That maybe it's too soon to ask you this, but maybe some challenges that you thought this could be it. I might be going back. I might be going back to work.
I haven't run into that too many times,
Good.
But I would say stepping into leadership, because Edwin and I were both individual contributors. And so now hiring a team and leading a team and figuring out also how Edwin and I work together. I do think we're great business partners. We're very yin and yang. But it is like another marriage. And so I have really gotten to know him very well as he's gotten to know me. And, you're talking about really hard things, about letting people go, about the finances of the business, and making lots of decisions together. So I think that's been a huge learning curve. But managing employees, I'm like, they're our greatest asset. And also they are the ones that will keep you up at night.
I've long said, and it's kind of true and mostly facetious, but I'd have the perfect business if it wasn't for customers, vendors, and employees. Get rid of those three and
That's true.
Nirvana. How is it working with a business partner? I said you had mentioned that you had to kind of get to know your business partner, and it's kind of like a marriage. I think it's more like a polygamous marriage, in that you're married to your business partner, you're married to the business, you're married to your customers, you're married to your team, you're married to your vendors and all this. But was it a pretty easy transition? Do you both know what lane you're driving in? Do you make up for skills that maybe he doesn't have, and vice versa? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because in the beginning, we had not spelled all of that out. All we knew was he and I were always vying for the number 1 or 2 spot. 1 year he'd be number 1 in sales, the next year I'd be number 1. So I knew he had a great work ethic, and he knew the same about me. But I didn't know how he operated in an office or how he would manage a team. But pretty quickly, we were able to flesh out that he was more of the finance guy. He wanted to pay the invoices and watch the bank account and manage the team. Like, he's very hands-on with the team, where I like to do more business development and marketing. I like to be out meeting our clients at events and posting on LinkedIn and things like that. So we quickly found, our strengths within the business, and we stay in those lanes pretty well. And then it's so nice having a partner, because I do think this would be a really hard business to run alone. Just the sheer amount of decisions you're making every day. So it's nice that we have each other. And I think that helps us keep the work-life balance as well. As I mentioned, I have 2 kids. I don't feel like I can't take a vacation or things are going to crash and burn while I'm gone. Our team's great, but also I know he's here to keep things moving, and he just had a back surgery, so he's been out for a few weeks, and he can rest assured that I'm here handling everything and doesn't have to sweat too much.
That's great. And we're going to talk about work-life balance and wine in a little bit. So you have a couple of things that you're doing, a few things that you're doing. One is Career Collective, the company that you and your partner, business partner, founded, and you also do coaching. Is that an accurate statement?
That is accurate. During COVID time, when I was exploring what I wanted to do,
When the
I got
world went
my
crazy, for a
yes.
couple of years.
And when I was used to working from home alone, and then had my kids and my husband there with me all day, every day, that was quite the change. But I started thinking about what else I wanted to do, and I started looking at career coaching and certifications. So got certified, and it changed my mindset in a lot of ways. And I was doing some coaching, I would say on the side when I was still recruiting. And then when we started Career Collective, same thing, was coaching people here and there. So we decided to bring it into the business and see if we could expand it and have it in-house. So it's something we're still playing with. I'm still coaching people, but it's not a big part of our business currently.
Right. And how would you describe your type of coaching? Is it still in the very specific niche industry, or is it a broader scope for coaching?
Yeah, it's much broader, and it's really helping people who are looking for a job. I think I can come at it from a recruiter's perspective
Mm.
and help them, because now it's so tough. And I hear about people being on the market for 9 months, for a year. They feel like they're applying to a black hole, they get ghosted. So just trying to help them with some of those tips and tricks, and then coming alongside them to encourage them along the way, because it can be such a terrible process.
I'm not a recruiter. I've had a lot of jobs. When I started working when I was 14, I worked for
Wow.
a Shakey's Pizza. Now they weren't allowed to pay me because I was underage, so I worked for pizza, which was better than money. In
That's
those
not bad.
days. Exactly. I could eat back then. I could eat all the pizza I wanted and never gain a pound. I was a skinny, lanky kid. But I've had a bunch of jobs, and so this bit of advice from Mike Conrad, that and $5 might buy you a cup of coffee. I find the best way to have a job, the best way to get a job, is to have a job. And I'll give you an example. I have a good friend of mine who's a software engineer, and he's jumped from. That's a very nomadic industry, a very competitive nomadic industry, and a lot of demand there if you're good. And he's jumped from job to job to job to job, and he's making, in the good six figures. And then he was looking for a job, and he posted something on LinkedIn that he thought was pretty locked down, and his employer found out. They got wind of it, and they terminated him, right? And they said, "Look, if you're looking for another job, let's just move on now." He spent a good 4 or 5 months before he could find another job because he went in unemployed, and it's almost like kind of buying a used car. You have to, why are you selling it? If I usually buy new cars, but in my younger days I bought used cars, and it was always like I tried to get in their head, like, what's wrong with it, so I always tell my friends in my professional career advice world, don't leave that job until you have something lined up. Or if it's in a similar field, just take the third best job that you think you're going to get, and be on someone's payroll when you go in for an interview, because people want what they can't have. They don't necessarily want what anyone can have, right? Is that sound advice, or is that crazy advice? Don't listen to Mike.
No, that's sound advice, and it goes back to my dating metaphor. You think about it, if a girl has a bunch of boyfriends,
yeah, exactly.
you might want to get in line. But if she has none and no prospects, then you're asking yourself, well, why not? And it's the same way when you're looking for a job. Yes, you want to be employed, or if you've been laid off, you want to be able to share you were the fourth or fifth round of layoffs, not the first.
Right.
We're seeing lots of layoffs or furloughs now. And, and clients and employers, they ask that question. Well, how many people were laid off? was it two of you or was it
was it 2 out of 100,000? In that case,
right?
we call that fired, right? Not
Right.
laid off.
Or was this, 100 people in a 600 company, or 600 person company? So those are good things to know. And I, like you, I started working when I was 16, as a lifeguard, and
Hmm.
best job ever. And I was so proud because I'm from a small town, but we were close to a military base, and I worked on the base, so I made more than minimum wage, and I was very proud of that.
Yeah. My first job where I actually got paid, I started on my 16th birthday because I was so excited. It was McDonald's, and I got paid $2.35 an hour. And when I finally got promoted up to $3 an hour, I took my parents out to dinner, and
I
my
love
parents
that.
were cool. Yeah, I didn't realize this at the time. My parents were like, the guy makes nothing, but just say yes. Just let him take us out to dinner. And I probably spent 4 months of my salary, taking my parents out to Sizzler or something. It wasn't a great dinner, but those were good days. What mistakes in your based on your experience? What mistakes do people make when seeking employment? And I'm maybe the first mistake is not using a recruiter, but we'll get to recruiting in a minute. But if someone's trying to look for a job on their own, say they worked in the federal government and Elon
Oh,
came to visit, and now all of a sudden, they're looking for a job. What's your advice to them, and what are the biggest mistakes people make when they apply for a job or go for an interview? What are the kind of the errors that you see on a regular basis that you have to kind of beat out of them?
yeah. I think the first thing is people want to just start applying. They start seeing jobs online, and so they just start applying for whatever is out there. But really, I think take a minute to figure out what you want to do next. You may feel like you don't have a lot of time, but use that time wisely to really dive into what's important to you. What values are you looking for in your next employer? Is the culture important? Is the hybrid work policy important? Think through those things. Um, Update your cover letter, update your resume, and then start working on your LinkedIn profile. Having that personal brand is really important. So get all those things in line before you start just cold applying to jobs. And then I would say lean into your network, really let them know that you're looking for a new position. See who can help you. Maybe it's alumni, maybe it's past, colleagues from past employers. Um, but doing that, and then if you're going to apply to jobs online, connect with the hiring manager or the person in charge of the hiring TA, whoever it may be, and let them know that you've applied and why you'd be a good fit for the job. You
Yeah,
have to take those extra steps now.
yeah, yeah. Well, you're in a big sea of people, and uh, I read recently that a number of internal recruiters, a number of HR people within a
Mhm.
company that are hiring people, uh, now run resumes and things like that through AI algorithms to spot trends or to weed out and prioritize who they should bring in for an interview, which is a little scary because if AI is used to discern the interviews, the resumes, then AI is also used to create those resumes, and
Right.
it's just one system hacking another. Um, are Is it possible today, in your world, and maybe even in the rest of the world, to actually show up in a lobby and ask for an interview, or is it everything now siloed and guarded and protected so that everything is a digital approach as opposed to a human
Mm.
approach?
Yeah, I think they may look at you funny if you showed up with a resume in hand and said, "Who can I talk to about a job?" But I don't think everything is online, and that's why I say connect with people over LinkedIn or through email and start reaching out to your network and see who can you have coffee with, who can they put you in touch with, what hiring events can you go to, or industry specific events, so you can shake hands and talk to folks and let them know that you're looking for a new role. So I don't think everything has to be done online, and that's where that human approach is really going to make you stand out. So once you've applied, if you can then call the hiring manager or send them a message on LinkedIn, or there's so many ways now to get their email. You can even shoot them an email, and that extra step will make you stand out. And then once you get the interview, make sure you've done your homework, make sure you've researched who you're interviewing with. You've looked at the company's website, their social media. Most everything's on the web now. So it just takes doing a little research to find out those things. But knowing who you're interviewing with and some things about them, can really make you stand out.
Yeah,
We interviewed a director internally, and she knew I had gone to NC State, which is, that's on my LinkedIn profile. But then she knew something else about my dog or something as well. And I thought that was really cool. And I definitely remembered that.
Yeah. I think that is amazing advice. The power of networking is amazing. And LinkedIn, in terms of social media platforms, I almost hesitate to call LinkedIn social media, although it is by definition. It's not social media like TikTok. It's not social media like Instagram or Facebook.
Right.
It is primarily business. And occasionally some trolls will get in there and try and stir the political pot up or something, hot button item. But when that happens, people kind of come down on them. It doesn't seem to stick around. But I agree completely. I think the power of networking is amazing, not just to find a job, but once you're in your industry. Because I think even if you have a job that you're happy with, there's always opportunity. And always be networking, always be looking, always be open. And I think maybe this is just the world according to Mike, but the worst thing someone can do on LinkedIn specifically is have that little flag on your profile picture that you can click a button and it'll do it. It'll say open to work.
Right.
I think there should not be any stigma for someone who's looking for a job. I'm not stigmatizing people who are looking for a job. But there is a stigma, even though there shouldn't be. I think if I'm looking to hire someone and I see someone on LinkedIn and it's just right across their face, open to work, I don't know. I just think, well, let me go to the next person for the reasons we talked about earlier.
Interesting.
There's no problem with them looking for a job, but I think when they just kind of make themselves a poster child, like a wanted poster, I want to work. I don't know. It just tells the whole world that they can't find a job. And that makes me wonder, am I going to be the one to break the trend? I don't want to take a chance. So, and I know that's super judgy, but I think other people might think the same thing, even if they may not be stupid enough to say it. But I don't know. My advice would be, and again, not professional, not a lawyer, I'm not a recruiter, but my advice would be take that stupid, open to work thing and just start putting yourself out there. And when people ask, what do you do? Go, oh, I'm between gigs right now, or start a side hustle. Side hustles are great moves it allows you to stay off the market longer and look for the perfect job. And B, it creates a whole new form of network. You went to business school and got a MBA. Did business school accurately represent what starting a business would be like, or was it was it Pollyannish? Was it valuable? Was it just way off? What was your experience comparing the education model versus the reality model?
Yeah, it was a long time ago, but I don't feel like it prepared me to be an entrepreneur. I will say that I do remember my husband helping me with my economics homework. But I will say it helped me make those connections. Like I said, that's how I got the job that I had, by meeting, making a friend there. So I think even networking while you're in school is super important. Did I need an MBA to do this job? Absolutely not. And a lot of recruiters, you don't have to have a degree at all. I mean, I think now having a degree is valuable in anything you do, but it's not necessary. If you want to do sales, you don't have to. You don't have to go to college first. My
Right.
daughter wants to be a real estate agent, and I would love for her to go to college to have that experience. And maybe she decides she wants to do something else, but she doesn't have to, you
Yeah,
know?
I went to college for 6 weeks. I went to not just college for 6 weeks. I went to junior college for 6 weeks to a JC, and I was so eager to work. I was so eager to take on the world, and probably a little arrogant and a little naive. After 6 weeks, I broke my father's heart and said,
Mm.
I'm done with this. I just want to work." And yeah, that was probably not the smartest move I've ever made,
Mhm.
but I don't regret it because it caused me to have different experiences than I may have
Yeah.
had otherwise, and it made me who I am. And who I am is who I am. I don't know what it would have been like the other way, but I don't have any regrets. Although I don't recommend that. I recommend if you're not sure what you want to do, by all means, get educated. Because it's just more options. Will you use it? Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe not. But you'll die with it. It'll be in your head. It'll be
Yeah.
valuable knowledge at some point. Um, you mentioned that.
My business oh, sorry, my
No, no, no.
business
Go ahead.
partner didn't go to college either. He says he went to the School of Hard Knocks.
But he's an architect. No.
Oh, no, not my husband, my business
Oh.
partner.
I'm sorry. Yes, your business
That's
partner.
okay.
Yeah, I want my attorney and my doctor to have degrees in their
Yeah.
respective careers. I want my pilot to have some kind of
Yeah.
certification that he or she went to flight school. Um, but outside of those specialties, I don't put a value over that. In my world, we hire engineers, and so obviously they have an engineering degree.
Uh-huh.
But we also hire software coders, and they don't have to have a degree. There's some pretty good, software people that are just
Yeah.
hacks. They're, and I think of like Steve Jobs, although he didn't write a lot of code. He's I think Stanford dropout, and Stanford's famous for having dropouts that became very successful. So if you're going to drop out of a college,
Let it
drop
be
out of
that one.
Stanford. Yeah, you'll be in good company. You mentioned that your MBA didn't really prepare you for business. What, in your opinion, would best prepare someone who is about to or is contemplating starting a business? What
Mhm.
preparation would you recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and same when you're looking for a job, if you can do informational interviews with people, that is super helpful because you're getting it, excuse me, straight from the horse's mouth. You can talk to them directly, ask them all the hard questions. So I think that's a really great way to go about it. Also think working in the industry that you're interested in before you start a business is really important. I've read many years ago, be really good at what you're doing within that industry before you go off and do it on your own. And as you probably know, there's lots of serial entrepreneurs. They've tried and tried and tried again before they hit it big or had a very successful business. So I think if entrepreneurship's in your blood, there's nothing stopping a 10-year-old from having a lemonade stand or a 13-year-old from being a dog walker. Just start leaning into it and trying different things. But I think talking to the people who have done it is really helpful.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Let's talk about your podcast, Wine After Work. What's that about?
Oh, yeah. So I talk to so many amazing people. I really enjoy it. And I say I'm channeling my inner Oprah because I grew up watching Oprah religiously. I remember it would come on in the afternoon, and this will tell you how old I am. After college, I got a DVD set of all her best shows, and I watched it one whole Christmas. I'm pretty sure I made my husband watch a lot of those. But I just loved her. I loved the way she interviewed people. And so now it's really fun for me to get to connect with women. There's so many incredible women and men doing really great things, and to be able to hear from them and hear what they're doing, what their journey's been, because I feel like most careers are not linear. Most people don't, I mean, my husband is one, but most people don't say, growing up, this is what I want to do, and then go to school to do it, and then do it the rest of their lives. There's lots of twists and turns most of the time. And so I love, hearing the stories of people who have done these great things, and, how they've persevered and how their story can help somebody else.
You mentioned the word perseverance. How do you persevere when things get tough? And things do get tough, obviously, in business. Things get tough in life in general. But what's your secret sauce for perseverance and determination and grit and all that?
Yeah. Well, I feel like I was born determined. As stupid as it may be, I will just keep pushing. and maybe sometimes I should quit. But the biggest thing, as well as my faith, there's going to be many hard times. I've been through them. I'm sure I will go through more, but having my faith to lean on is super helpful. I try to fill my mind with positive messages. I feel like it's so easy to get, down a rabbit hole of the news, things on social media. So instead, I try to set boundaries around that and really listen to great podcasts that can be uplifting. Music could be that way, books, anything to really feed my soul and help me be positive is what I lean on.
That's great. What made you start the podcast, Wine After Work?
Yeah, I started it almost 4 years ago, which is crazy to say now. I took a course on how to start one, and I thought, all right, I can do this. I have an interest in so many things, and I'm a very curious person, which I think is what made me a great recruiter. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to just try to figure this out, and I want to start talking to people. So getting guests on in the very beginning was tough. You're a brand new show, so I'm reaching out to people, asking them to be on. And then over time that shifts. But I've just really enjoyed having the conversations. And I thought it would be a great way to share what I'm doing and the wisdom I've learned, but also have other people do that as well.
Yeah. If I have this, I don't know if it's overly unique. I think it's catching on, but I'll call it unique right now. I have this kind of unique view of marketing, and I know what marketing isn't, because we did that for a long time. And marketing used to be very obnoxious, very in your face, very product-centric, me-centric, company-centric. We're the best. They all suck, blah, 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 blah. Very obnoxious, in-your-face advertising. And then my company's been around for 33 years. So I think after about 25 years, the industry pretty much got tired of all of our marketing gimmicks. So we switched models radically and went to a whole different style of marketing, education-based marketing. The company I own is in the electronics industry. We build pretty much everything that is around you right now. And our industry does. Mike doesn't. Our industry does. And the change we made was the products that we build solve a problem that people don't really understand that they have. There's a thing going on in our industry, without jumping down the technical rabbit hole, that are causing circuit boards to fail. And there's a very specific cause for that, which isn't obvious. And the equipment that we sell stops that from happening. So we can't just talk about our equipment, because we can say our equipment does this, our equipment does that, but they don't understand they even need the equipment. And it would be like me trying to talk about the technology behind a pacemaker when you're healthy. You're like, why do I care about pacemakers? I don't need a pacemaker. Right. I don't care to even know how it works. it's kind of a similar situation. So we switched to an education model. We talk about the issues the reliability issues within the electronics industry, and not our products, but best practice mitigation techniques for those issues. And so we sell through education, and that involves webinars and speaking at technical conferences and being on technical committees and being on, serving the industry that we work and play in, and becoming an authority-based influencer. And I hate the word influencer because I think of Kardashian, TikTok, but it is it's a different way to sell, and because you're not trying to sell anything. And I think the best way to sell your product is to not sell your product. And I think that probably applies. That was a bit ranty there, but it probably applies a little bit to putting yourself out there as a potential employee. I think if you just lead with that equivalent obnoxious hire me, hire me, hire me, hire me, you're just part of the noise that everyone is. Right. You're banging that same drum in the same cadence, and no one stands out. I think one needs to do something that very few other people are doing, so that your sound rises above. And I'm not sure how to translate that to becoming hired, but I think it can be translated. And it's going back to our conversation about networking, going back to demonstrating your value without trying to sell it. Be the value, and participate in your industry, even if you're not working in your industry at the moment. Keep going to your association chapter meetings. Keep, doing those types of things. And it will be a surprise to someone to find out, what, you're not working? Are you kidding?
Right.
And then, I don't know, then I think it's a psychological game. I think at some point, all of a sudden, you're very desirable. It's like, let's grab that person before someone else does. I didn't even realize they were available. It's like, it's the garage sale find. It's like, they don't realize what they have here. They're selling this for 25 cents and it's worth $10, that type of thing. Does that make sense in your world, or is that too Pollyannish for your industry?
No, it does make sense. And that's why I think it's really important to keep showing up on LinkedIn. What you'll see is a lot of people will stop posting. They start a new job. They don't go on LinkedIn for 2 years. They lose their job or decide they need a new one. Then they get on LinkedIn. Well, it's much easier if you stay connected with these people. If you show up, you said influencer, you could say subject matter expert, and post on what you know, post on your industry, share other people's posts. If you keep showing up that way and stay in touch with your network and go to events and things like that, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. Going back to Career Collective, you're probably not the only recruiter in town, although you are in a niche industry, but there's probably a few others in that niche industry as well. How do you stand out? How do you stand out over the others? What makes Career Collective different?
Yeah, I would say amongst other recruiters, it is being in this niche industry. This is all we do, so we know it really well. But if you're comparing us to others who are also in this niche industry, I think it's really caring. We have a great culture here. We pay our people well. And the place I came from, it was very backstabby, very dog eat dog. And we're not like that here. We have SOPs in place. We are salespeople, but rarely are people going behind someone's back and trying to sell their opportunity or doing gross snake type stuff. So everybody's working together. And I think that comes out when you're working with a candidate or a client, because we truly have their best interest at heart. We don't get paid unless we make the match. So we're working really hard to make that happen. But I think just really listening to our clients and our candidates, again, you can't sell them anything. You're trying to, show them an opportunity, or you might say sell the opportunity, but that means knowing your client's benefits, their culture, what the hiring process looks like, how they stand out. And then it's having video calls with your client, going on client visits to see their office. So really, again, making the extra effort. I heard a speaker recently at High Point University, and he talked about the and then some. You're hired to do your job, but what is the and then some you're doing?
Mhm.
Is it staying later? Is it making the few extra calls? And I think, with everything in life, you have to go the extra mile.
Yeah.
I might not be the most talented person, but I will say no one's going to outwork me.
I like the phrase "and then some." I would call that value added, but I think "and then some," and I think there's always "and then some," right?
Right.
It's not just what's on paper at the time of the interview. And it's, I think all jobs morph over time. As technology changes, as expectations change, as one becomes more experienced, they take on more responsibility, and you're not just going off a script that was written 20 years before, right? How do you manage work-life balance? Wine after work is probably a good a good way to decompress. But when one starts a business, I know my experience was this, and I'm sure yours is too, and probably every entrepreneur, it's all consuming. We talk about a work-life balance. Someone suggested they rename that, and I forget. I should remember what they called it. But basically, it wasn't balance, because at first it's not balanced. And there probably should not be any expectation that in the beginning there will be a balance, because it's very unbalanced at first. But at some point, it has to kind of come back into some form of balance. What is your recommendation to be able to know when it's time to pay attention to oneself or one's family or nature or whatever the case may be? How do you pull yourself away from all that?
Yeah, I think it ebbs and flows. Sometimes depending on what's going on in your personal or your family life, they may need more attention. And sometimes your business or your job is going to need more attention. So trying to be present where you are and not be at work checking your phone or worried about the kids, and vice versa, be at home checking emails and things like that. Sometimes you're going to need to. And I will say, when the kids were younger, it was much more difficult, because if anybody has toddlers, it's all hands on deck. But now my job is really just taxi driver. So I take them from point A to point B. And when I'm sitting in the car, I can log back onto my computer. But I think it all starts with setting boundaries. I know personally, I like to get a workout in before I go to work. It wakes me up. It puts me in a better mood. So making sure I go to bed on time so I can get up and early and do that for myself before I come in is a gift to me, my family, and my employees, because I'm not cranky and I'm awake and I'm ready to go. So I think knowing yourself and what's needed, and just drawing those boundaries and making sure, if you're creating time on the weekends and at night for your family, you're carving that time out. But sometimes, things will arise. And I think explaining that to your family, they'll understand if it's not all the time. And how often are people on their phones now? Can we put our phones away and truly be present at home, whether it's work or social media or whatever it may be? I think it's just setting the boundaries and then being present where you're at.
Yeah, being present it's funny that that in today's society, we even have to say that, right? Like, hey, be present. But there's so many distractions. I mean, it's, technology. My industry is creating all these distractions, and it is an effort now just to be present.
Yeah, it's
an
true when you're working too.
Totally, because it's all immersive, today. So a couple more questions, and then we have to wrap up. What was surprisingly more difficult than you expected when you started your business, and what was surprisingly more easy than you expected when you started your business?
Easy, I will say we grew pretty quickly. We've got a Raleigh location and a Tampa location and 18 employees. So that was great. Like I said, we've got some amazing team members. But I do think even as recruiters, we made a lot of mistakes in the beginning with our hiring. And so that was more difficult because we had to let several of those people go. Either they weren't performing or they weren't a culture fit. And in the beginning, I will say a lot of those decisions weighed very heavily on us. Not that firing somebody gets any easier, but it was like every decision was so pivotal because we hadn't done it before. And so it took us way too long to make some of those decisions. And now I feel more in line and more attuned to what our big vision is. And when those, hard decisions come up, you can ask, does this fit within our vision? Is this going to help us move forward to the place we want to go? And if not, it makes it a little bit easier to say no to that thing or, to let that person go.
Yeah. Excellent. And last question. How did you define success before you started the company, and how do you define success today?
Oh, that's so good. I'm really driven by money. So my younger self, and I still am, but my younger self would have said making more money, being able to buy all the things I want to buy, taking the trips I want to take. I love traveling, but as I get older, it's definitely like time with family and friends. That means so much to me, being able to just be outside in the sunshine, like such a small thing, but I love that. And your health. I'm like, if we're not healthy, we have nothing.
You know how I know it's almost time to end the show? Because your dog is telling you. Is that your dog I'm hearing in the background? It's like, hey, I've been patient. It's time for you to give me attention now.
I was hoping you wouldn't hear him, but now he's crying and scratching at the door.
Oh, no problem. I said earlier before we went on the air that we're a very dog-friendly show. But with all deference to your dog, I will let you go. For my guests who would like to get more information on Career Collective, I will have the URL in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, just look down here, show more, and you'll get information on Career Collective there, as well as a link to the Wine After Work podcast. The wine is not included. You have to bring your own, I believe. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, just look at the show notes on your podcast app, and that information will be there as well. Bryce Batts, Career Collective co-founder and host of the Wine After Work podcast. Thank you so much for being my guest today. Thanks for your generous amount of time that you've given me and the amount of good advice and sage knowledge that you've given me and my audience. I really appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you, Mike. Thank you so much. You're an incredible host, and I've really enjoyed being here.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment from one podcaster to another. I appreciate that. Thanks, Bryce.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. A special thanks to Bryce Batts for being my guest on the show. The Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast is available on all major podcast sites and on the Reluctant Entrepreneur YouTube channel. We've been busy recording future episodes with fascinating guests, which I'm excited to share with you. So don't miss out. Subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are released. We release new episodes twice a month on the first and third Tuesday. If you're an entrepreneur or know of an entrepreneur who would like to be a guest on my show, please let me know. Visit mikeconrad.com/podcast and apply to be a guest or recommend a guest. Just remember that's Conrad spelled with a K. If you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is mike@mikeconrad.com. Once again, Conrad with a K. And a little shameless plug, if you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable. It's available as a paperback as well as a Kindle version, both available on Amazon, and as an audiobook available on both Audible and Amazon. Thanks again for listening or watching. Until I see you again, be unstoppable.